Ever thought you had all your estate planning ducks in a row only to discover a blind spot that could unravel everything? Dive in with me as we uncover the estate planning disaster no one sees, the pitfalls of joint ownership that could change your financial legacy. So, there are a lot of different ways to own property. In most jurisdictions, there's at least 9 different ways that you can title property. And that's how we can tell how it's legally owned. And our go-to in most instances is a family trust, kind of as the foundation of your estate plan. And it does a lot of really good things, not the least of which is avoiding probate. Now, sometimes people will come to us and they'll say, Richard, I am thinking about adding a family member to an account. Let's say it's a checking account, savings account, and brokerage, investment account. They want to add somebody to the deed. And they'll ask us if that's a good idea. And what we quickly sort of discern is they're really thinking of this as kind of a simpler version, as a substitute for a kind of comprehensive estate plan. So what I want to do is, if you're considering this, I want to give you 4 different things to think about in terms of how that might play out. And this is especially so if you have more than one child, because that's where it gets really complicated. Now, you decide that you want to add, for example, a son or daughter to a bank account or to your deed. And the reasoning is that it avoids probate. And, boy, if you're in the hospital or something and they need to quickly write a check or something from your account, they can. And that's true. Under this arrangement, it does avoid probate and there is some convenience to it. So I get that. What it is not a good substitute for is an estate plan, though. So a lot of times, for example, when you have multiple kids and one of them is on the bank account, what people don't always realize is that by operation of law, when you have a joint tenancy, when you have a joint account with someone else, that person gets that account by operation of law at your passing, and the others don't. So if there are 3 kids, for example, and one of them gets the account or your home because you've added them to the deed, usually what we see is, well, Richard, that child knows that they're supposed to split that with the other 2 kids. And some families, maybe that works. And unfortunately, we spend, years in the litigation trenches because it doesn't work. Really, what you're doing is because you've legally transferred title in a certain way, what you've done probably is unintentionally disinherited, in my hypo, 2 other kids. And they're really at the mercy of that other child that's now on the deed to do the right thing. And if you're not there, if you're not because you've passed away, we're creating some real dynamics for your kids that we want to think about. So that's the first factor. The other 3 factors to maybe run through is, obviously when you add somebody else to the account, it creates the potential for, mismanagement of the account because they do have equal access. They have equal rights to pull it all out. So if you have an account, you put in $50,000 on Monday, on Tuesday, the other joint tenant, your son or daughter in my hypo, can pull it all out and, do whatever with it. Obviously, they're still your child, so you'll figure that out. But that's something to be aware of. The third thing is that sometimes catches people is that it exposes the asset, the account or your home, if you've transferred your deed, to the potential for a creditor attack that child has. So if that child, for example, is in a car accident, there's some sort of creditor attack, there is now an account with their name on it, with assets money that's in that account that can be attached through a creditor attack. Why? Because they partially own it. And that's a real consequence that I've seen happen. I've even seen that come up in a divorce setting. More and more, it's well over 50%, unfortunately, of our kids that get divorced. And this is why, again, from a trust planning standpoint, there's a lot of thinking that goes in the design so that there's divorce protection. Here is a joint account in their name, and we've certainly seen that come up. The last thing I want to mention is taxes, and this really catches people also. So the way it works, without getting into the weeds on this, is if you pass away, for example, if you own a home and it's in a trust, that property for income tax purposes receives what's called a step-up in basis. So that if your your trustee, for example, wants to sell you've passed, they want to sell the property, divide it equally between 3 of your kids, they have very little capital gain to deal with in the trust because they get a step-up in basis to the fair market value as of the date of your passing. Now, Contrast that with a joint tenant, where a joint tenant receives the basis for the adjusted basis for income tax purposes. Basically, they receive your basis for their part of the asset, and they may not receive a step-up in basis in that. And so sometimes that catches people. So as you think about your estate planning, as you think about your family, one vision I want you to have is you're thinking about this. You're up there in heaven looking down one day and you see your kids. It's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, it's something, it's a birthday. Are they talking about, something that happened years ago, about some account that was maybe still not really clear how it was supposed to work? Or are they talking about something else, maybe great memories of the family? So my hope is this gets you to think. If it makes sense, fantastic. But my goal of this was to help you understand the unintended consequences, the potential disaster at times, especially when there's an unintended disinheritance that plays out.